Well, good afternoon and welcome back to another fishing adventure. Got a little bit of a breeze, but that's kindly lightened off in the last hour, just in time for the rising tide. And this particular episode isn't really about the fishing. Even though we're going to get into that, we're going to cast some lures and hopefully catch some silver. It's about knowing your area. And a lot of people ask me, how do you find marks? Where's the best place to go? Now, when I was younger, all I used to do is get my parents to drop me somewhere and I'd go for a scout about with my rod. Obviously, look at the tide book, make sure you're safe, you're not in a place that's going to get surrounded, follow the tide out, but also watch the tide come back in. And in this particular zone, that's what I used to do all the time. Let's get into this. It's a little bit low on the tide at the moment, but we'll get into it a little bit later and we'll go from there. Fingers crossed we get some fish, but as I say, I can't promise anything. Let's go fishing. Right, let's get into this. Now, this pool here is actually pretty shallow, but it's the main tributary that's running actually from the sea, the open sea, and it's channeling and funneling into this bay. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be fish in here, but it's a good starting point. Always just have a little look around and see if you can see anything moving around in the shallows. It's always good to have a pair of sunnies, but I know it's only a couple of foot deep in here. You wouldn't want to be throwing anything too heavy, something weedless or something like that. You might actually just get stuck straight away. I'm going to have a little chuck in here just for a little play. I know it's very shallow in here. I can feel it bumping off the bottom straight away. But like I say, keep a rod tip high a lot of the time, depending on the weight of your lure, you should be quite fine. Just going to have a little start in here. You just never know. Yeah, it's quite shallow in places still. You can see my rod just banging, and that's it getting hung up on the bottom, hence why I'm using a weedless lure. But all we're going to do is just literally follow the tide up, watch out for areas that fill up first. See, it's a little bit deeper there. Might have got a hit there, I'm not too sure. Now, if this was night time, I reckon maybe a fish or two might be moving in, but it's not. Evening. Might go for a different lure. As you've seen there, I'm getting hung up a lot with this heavier lure. So as you've probably just seen, I just started with a JJ minnow. I was getting hit off the bottom. I was getting hung up a lot. The water probably out there is probably at a maximum of 2 foot. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. Just chuck a lure on, cast it out and, you know, fancy your chances. For all those beginners out there, look, this isn't gospel, yeah, but this is just something that works for me and it might work for you. If you're fishing in really shallow water with a jig head like so, which is kind of heavy, you're just going to get stuck on the bottom and hung up all the time. So let's remove that. Again, just use these small little clips, they're great. And what we'll do is we'll put on something weedless, something not as weighty, something that will flow. Maybe something just like so. Or I do have in my box of treats this, which I think I'll do. I'll use this. Now, as you can see with this lure, it's got a twist lock which goes inside the lure so it hangs on. It's got a weedless hook, a little belly weight on it, and all you do is literally thread it so it sits nicely on there like so. And what that's going to do, it's not going to get hung up on the bottom, it's just going to flow. That tail movement's going to be scrumptious, and hopefully there's a fish in it that fancies it. Again, these don't cast as good, but they're really good for controlling the lure and letting it flow. I'll keep that one in my pocket just in case. Clip this one on and we'll go for it. Now look, the tide's coming in a lot now. I was literally just standing there a second ago, so it's starting to push in. So it's always good to know your exit out of a particular place that you're fishing. You don't want to be scampering over a rock which has a gully on the back of it, which is going to fill in as well. because then you're leaving yourself in a real spot of bother. With this one, you can see that the return rate is much slower. Give it a little twitch if you want. Because that lure is pretty much weightless, it's just got that added weight, it's not getting as hung up on the bottom. And I actually just had a hit, pretty sure. And I'm bringing this in, and all it's doing is just flowing right to left with the tide. It's got a lovely natural colour, this particular lure. Kind of looks like a sand eel. Tide is really starting to push in now. Tributaries all on the other side are starting to fill, and I've not been here long at all. I actually just spotted, I think, a fish come out of the water up there, the back of it. I'm unsure because there's not a rock up there. Could be a mullet. And like I say, I'm just fishing this so it just flows right to left with the tide, just keeping a nice connection with the lure. And the fishing's so much easier and so much more enjoyable. I don't know if you can see this lure in front of me. It looks so good and natural in this particular area. Doesn't look like it does much, but that tail really gives off a really nice little vibration, like a little sand eel coming through. Oh, I thought we had a hook up there, but must have just got hung up on a little bit of weed. It's definitely starting to get a little bit deeper now. I'm just looking at the little area behind me. It is starting to fill up nicely. Right, I've had nothing on this particular straight-tailed lure. It's just going to mix it up, I think. Same kind of practice, and put something on which is similar, but this is a paddle tail, as you can see, a little bit different. Now I like this coloration at the moment. There's a lot of sardines around in Jersey, and they've kind of got like a bluey dark top and a kind of silver bottom, so that would be the perfect color. I think this is a Katesh. Does look good, but the same again, this is just going to be fished weedless, and it's just going to have a different kind of style. It's got more of a slalom paddle tail kind of look to it compared to that straight tail. Again, if there's no fish here, nothing's going to take it, is it? But it's always worth mixing it up. You can actually feel the vibration of the tail on this lure as it's moving through the water. Really nice feel. We'll give it a couple more casts and then we'll have a little wander. There's no fish here as of yet. Might be a case that there's just no fish here tonight. Well, no fish as of yet. That gully has started to really fill in. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rest before it starts to fill up these kind of areas. Now, this area behind me is not part of that gully. This is an area I'd class as a holding bay. But when the tide goes out, these areas of water always hold. Now, obviously there's a channel that fills in. There's plenty of channels on this particular one that fill in. Now, these kind of areas hold fish, 100% hold fish. The fish kind of sometimes pack up in them, they sit deep, or the bait comes into here and holds deep or holds around the edges in the shelter of the current, and this is where the fish come in and proper prey about. Now, I'm not saying every time the fish are going to be here, because that doesn't happen, but it's always good to be walking along and going, I'm at that particular place now where there's that deeper zone, let's have a cast through that. And that's what I usually do. Watch the tide flow into it, how it fills up, and then how it pours out, if that makes sense. Because usually the water will come in, it will sit, it will fill, it will fill, it will fill, and then it will push out. That could be the one. You just never know. You just got to fish it and give it a go. Well, putting in mind, 10 minutes ago I was standing over there. Just goes to show you how quick the tide can really come in. I'm going to change out from the weedless, because now I know that this water in front of me is kind of around 4 foot deep. I'm just going to go for a little 15-gram YKR in that kind of bluey green colour, sticking with the coloration that I like. Nothing too bright, nothing too mad. I'm just going to work it. Straight wind this, but also keeping an eye on the tide behind me because it is starting to fill up in certain areas. My lure weight is still not as heavy as I was using to start off with. Enough to get it out there, but not too much that it gets hung up on the bottom. As I always say, you might have your favourite lure that fishes or outfishes other lures, but it's not made for every situation. While we wait for this tide to just move in a bit more so I can start fishing again, this little snap really does go to show how quickly the tide can move in and you can get cut off in particular places that you're fishing. It's really key to understand the area that you're fishing in, understand where the water moves, how it feels and where it's going to go, because if you get that wrong, that's when you end up in trouble. Well, no fish so far. Can't win it all, you can't have it all. I've had fish in that gutter before, sometimes I haven't. That's fishing. Sometimes the fish come in, sometimes they don't. Fingers crossed they do come in a little bit later on as the light starts to fade and we can actually get into some fish. But don't get bugged up about not catching fish in your first session or in any session. I like to learn from my sessions. Sometimes I don't catch for weeks on end, but when you start to lock into them, you start to realize what they're feeding on and what lures are working. You can kind of lock into it and go mental and go fishing as much as possible until your partner absolutely hates you, or your friend's partner absolutely hates you because he's always coming fishing with you. It happens. I bet it happens to some fishermen out there. Right, the water's just started to flow in really nicely now. It's just starting to properly fill up. Now it's probably not deep enough to fish again this lure. You probably think that I was using this lure before, but why isn't he using it again now? Well, I'm in a totally different area now where the water's now flowing in, but it's not as deep. So this is just definitely going to get hung up. Maybe another foot of water, this 15-gram lure might do its thing. So I'm going to go back to the weedless lure again. Give that a whirl. Still think it's a little bit low for any fish to be in the area, but you just never know. You just got to give these things a go. But as you can see in front of me, the tide is flowing, and if you see that lure just there, if I give that a little flick, it really does come to life. Looks like a lovely little sand eel holding in. I just don't think there's going to be any fish in this particular area just yet, but it's worth a shout. Don't have to reel quick because that tide's bringing that water into us, so the flow of the lure is going to be quick. You just never know if there's a bass already early with the tide moving in. That's the best thing about fishing, you just never know. And once it gets a little bit deeper, I can fish a heavier lure. Oh, I think that was the bottom. As I say, just reeling slowly because the lure is coming with the tide, so you can kind of just let it do its thing. Give it a kind of little flick here and there. Just had a disturbance on the water just there. I'm unsure if there was actually a fish behind me there. Not too sure. With this weedless lure, you can kind of give it a little jolt if you like as well. I kind of don't because it's still a little bit shallow. So when you do jolt it, it kind of dips it up and down. So if it is in the vicinity of some weed and that, it can kind of get hung in it. But this particular lure is really good when it's just doing its own thing. Well, I know the fishing hasn't been too spectacular in this session, but for me this was just about helping others that like to get out, but you know, always ask the question where to go fish. The key to it is just to go scope some ground out, always be safe, learn the area. You might not catch in it, but it's going to take a while to find out. A bit of flow, lots of cover, lots of troughs, lots of holding areas that the fish could be. Give it a go. Be there when the tide goes in, be there when the tide goes out, and that's the key to fishing, to be honest. I've been fishing for a long time, and it took me a while to kind of pick up spots and learn what the bass are doing, and learning what any fish are doing, to be honest. It's not just bass, you know, everything's different, every fish is different, they all act differently. So I hope you have enjoyed this. It's a magnificent sunset, and fingers crossed, I'm gonna go somewhere else and maybe we might actually get a fish on the board. We'll see. If I don't, you won't see anything else, so we'll see. We might cut to the chase, we might not. But if you've enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Oh yeah, nice 60. Beautiful fish. Go on, bro.